What happens when Hollywood's most legendary tough guy finally snaps on live television? In just 48 seconds, everything went off the rails in a way nobody saw coming. Before we get into this absolute chaos, make sure you hit that subscribe button right now. We bring you daily videos exposing Hollywood's darkest scandals. And trust me, you don't want to miss what's coming next. Last night on The View, what started as a conversation about Harrison Ford's latest projects turned into one of the most explosive moments in daytime television history. The tension was there from the very beginning, simmering just beneath the surface, waiting to boil over. Harrison Ford walked onto the stage with that familiar scowl he's known for, settling into his seat across from the panel. The applause from the audience was loud, enthusiastic even, but you could already sense something was off. The way Ford sat down, the way he adjusted his jacket, the way his eyes scanned the panel. It looked like a man preparing for battle, not a friendly chat. Whoopi Goldberg started with some small talk, asking about his flight to New York, how he was feeling, the usual pleasantries. Ford's answers were short, clipped, barely more than a few words. It was clear he wasn't in the mood for games. The other hosts noticed it too, exchanging quick glances with each other when they thought the cameras weren't on them. Then Whoopi shifted gears. She leaned forward in her chair, that signature look on her face that regular viewers know means she's about to dig deep into something. "So Harrison, your new movie has some interesting political themes," she said, her voice carrying that particular tone that walks the line between curious and confrontational. "Care to explain what you were trying to say with it?" Ford's entire body language changed in an instant. His shoulders tensed up, his jaw tightened just a bit. He took a slow breath before answering, like he was choosing his words very carefully. I wasn't trying to say anything political, Whoopi. It's just a story, an adventure. That's what I do. I tell stories." "Come on now," Whoopi pressed, a slight smile playing at her lips but her eyes staying dead serious. "Everything's political these days. You can't make a movie about climate change and corporate greed without making a statement. You've been in this business long enough to know that." "I make movies that entertain people," Ford replied, his voice getting a little harder, a little more defensive. "I'm not here to preach to anyone. People can take from it what they want. They can find meaning in it, or they can just enjoy the ride. That's up to them, not me." Whoopi wasn't satisfied with that answer. You could see it written all over her face. "But you chose this story specifically. You chose to be a part of a film with these themes. That's a choice, Harrison. A deliberate one. Every role I take is a choice," Ford said, his fingers now drumming on the armrest. "But that doesn't mean I'm trying to force my beliefs down anyone's throat. I read a good script. I liked the character. I signed on. That's how this works." The other hosts exchanged glances. You could feel it in the studio. Something was building. The audience shifted uncomfortably in their seats, sensing that this wasn't going the way these interviews usually go. There was an edge to the conversation that felt dangerous, unpredictable. Whoopi wasn't backing down. If anything, she was just getting started. "But you've been outspoken about environmental issues for decades. You fly around the world talking about conservation, giving speeches at conferences, meeting with politicians. Don't you think it's a bit hypocritical when you're also flying private jets everywhere? When you own multiple homes? When your carbon footprint is probably bigger than 100 regular people combined?" Ford's eyes narrowed. His fingers drummed once, twice on the armrest of his chair. When he spoke, his voice was controlled, but you could hear the anger underneath it. "I offset my carbon footprint. I've talked about this before. I put my money where my mouth is, and I've been doing it long before it was trendy. I've invested millions in conservation projects. I've dedicated decades of my life to this cause. Offsetting doesn't change the fact that you're contributing to the problem," Whoopi shot back, her voice rising slightly. The smile was completely gone now. "You tell regular people to change their lives, to make sacrifices, to give up their comfort, but you don't have to give up yours. You tell them to fly less while you take private jets. You tell them to conserve energy while you heat and cool multiple massive properties. How is that fair? How is that not the definition of hypocrisy? The question hung in the air like a grenade with the pin pulled out. Ford's face was turning red now, the anger no longer hidden beneath a veneer of politeness. His knuckles were white from gripping the armrests so hard. Fair? Ford's voice dropped lower, which somehow made it more intense, more threatening. You want to talk about fair, Whoopi? I've dedicated 40 years of my life and millions upon millions of dollars to conservation efforts. I've worked with scientists, indigenous communities, governments, anyone who would listen. I've used my platform, my fame, my money to try to make a real difference. What exactly are you doing besides sitting here judging people from your comfortable chair? The studio went completely silent. You could have heard a pin drop. The camera operators looked at each other, unsure if they should keep rolling. The other hosts looked absolutely shocked, their mouths literally hanging open. Nobody talks to Whoopi like that on her own show. Nobody. Whoopi's expression changed completely. The professional broadcaster mask slipped away, replaced by genuine anger. Her eyes went hard, her jaw set. Excuse me? You don't get to come on my show and disrespect me like that, Harrison. I asked you a legitimate question. A question that a lot of people want answered. A question that matters. No, you came at me with an accusation dressed up as a question. Ford fired back, sitting up straighter now, leaning forward in his seat. There's a difference, and you know it. You invited me here to promote my film, not to put me on trial for how I live my life. Not to attack my character. Not to question my integrity. This is my show, Whoopi said firmly, her voice cutting through the tension like a knife. And if I want to ask tough questions, I'm going to ask them. That's what we do here. We have real conversations. We don't just let celebrities come on and promote their projects without challenging them. That's not what journalism is. Real conversations? Ford let out a harsh laugh that echoed through the silent studio. This isn't a conversation. This is an ambush. You've already made up your mind about me before I even sat down. You decided I was a hypocrite before I walked through that door. And nothing I say is going to change your mind. So, why are we even doing this? One of the other hosts tried to jump in, her voice nervous and shaky. Maybe we should talk about the actual movie itself. The story, the action sequences, Harrison's character arc. No, let him finish. Whoopi interrupted sharply, not even looking at her co-host. Her eyes were locked on Ford like a laser. He clearly has something he wants to say. So let's hear it, Harrison. Let's hear what you really think. What I want to say, Ford continued, his voice steady but filled with barely controlled anger, every word deliberate and sharp, is that I'm tired of this holier-than-thou attitude. You sit here every day, acting like you have all the answers, passing judgment on everyone who comes through that door. Politicians, actors, musicians, activists, it doesn't matter. You've got an opinion on everything and everyone, and somehow, your opinion is always the right one. You want to talk about hypocrisy? How about we talk about yours? The audience gasped. This was going places nobody expected. The cameras kept rolling, capturing every second of the meltdown happening in real time. Whoopi stood up from her chair, pointing a finger at Ford. You need to watch how you're speaking to me right now. I've been nothing but respectful to you. Respectful? Ford stood up too, matching her energy. You attacked me the second I sat down. You didn't ask about my film. You didn't ask about my career. You went straight for the throat because that's what you do. You create drama for ratings. That is not what I do, Whoopi said, her voice rising to match his. I ask the questions that need to be asked. If you can't handle that, maybe you shouldn't be doing press tours. Maybe I shouldn't, Ford agreed, his jaw clenched. Maybe I should have known better than to come on a show where the host is more interested in scoring points than having an actual conversation. The tension in the room was suffocating. Everyone watching knew they were witnessing something unprecedented. This wasn't just a disagreement. This was a full-blown confrontation between two Hollywood icons, and neither one was backing down. Things escalated even further when Whoopi decided to go for the personal attack. She took a deep breath, and you could see her shifting tactics, going for something she knew would hit harder. You know what? Let's talk about your attitude problem. You've been difficult on sets for years. Everyone knows it. Everyone in Hollywood has heard the stories. You've snapped at directors, fought with producers, walked off sets, refused to do press, made people's lives miserable. This isn't new behavior for you. This is who you are. Ford's face turned an even deeper shade of red. His hands balled into fists at his sides. How dare you bring up gossip and rumors like they're facts? You don't know a damn thing about how I work or who I am. You're just repeating tabloid bullshit that you read in some trashy magazine. You have no idea what goes on behind the scenes, what the real story is, what actually happened in any of those situations. I know what multiple sources have said, Whoopi countered, not backing down an inch. I know what your reputation is. I know that directors have complained about working with you, that crew members have said you're cold and distant, that you've made people cry on set. Are all of them lying, Harrison? Are all of these people just making things up? Context matters, Ford said through gritted teeth. I have high standards. I expect professionalism. I expect people to do their jobs well. If that makes me difficult, then fine. I'm difficult. But I've also worked with the same people over and over again. If I was such a nightmare, why do directors keep hiring me? Why do crews want to work with me again? Maybe, just maybe, those stories you heard are exaggerated or completely false. Or maybe you're just too big of a star for people to call you out publicly, Whoopi suggested, her eyebrows raised. Maybe people put up with your behavior because you're Harrison Ford, and they don't have a choice. That doesn't make it okay. Don't you curse at me, Whoopi warned, her finger still pointed at him like a weapon. I will have you removed from this set so fast your head will spin. This is my show. Harrison, mine. You don't get to talk to me like that here. I'd like to see you try, Ford interrupted, his voice like ice, cold and hard, and completely unafraid. You think you're intimidating? You think raising your voice and pointing your finger scares me? I've dealt with studio executives who controlled my entire career. I've dealt with demanding directors who made my life hell. I've dealt with difficult co-stars who tried to sabotage my performances. You don't scare me, Whoopi. Not even a little bit. The other hosts were completely frozen now, unsure of what to do or how to intervene. One of them had her hand over her mouth in shock. Another was gripping the edge of the table so hard her knuckles were white. The producers were probably panicking backstage, screaming into their headsets, trying to figure out how to salvage this disaster. But the cameras kept rolling because this was ratings gold. Even if it was completely out of control, this was the kind of moment that would be replayed for years. Whoopi took a step closer to Ford's seat area, her entire body language screaming confrontation. Every muscle in her body was tense. This is my show, my set, my rules. And if you can't show some basic respect, if you can't answer simple questions without having a meltdown, then you can get the hell out. The door's right there. Oh, I'm leaving, Ford said, already reaching down to unhook his microphone pack from his belt. His hands were shaking slightly, whether from anger or adrenaline. It was hard to tell. But let me make something crystal clear before I go. You invited me here under false pretenses. Your producers called my people. They said this would be a friendly conversation about my work, about my new film, about my career. Instead, you tried to make me look like some kind of hypocrite on national television. That's not journalism, Whoopi. That's a hit job. That's an ambush. If you can't defend your own lifestyle choices, if you can't answer legitimate questions about the contradictions in your public image, that's on you, Whoopi retorted, crossing her arms defensively across her chest. I asked fair questions, questions that viewers want answered, questions that matter. Fair? Ford ripped off his microphone with more force than necessary, the sound of it thudding on the desk, making everyone in the studio jump. A few audience members actually gasped out loud. There was nothing fair about any of this. You had your mind made up before I walked through that door. You wanted a fight from the very beginning. And congratulations, you got one. I hope you're proud of yourself. I wanted honesty, Whoopi said, her voice sharp as a knife, cutting through the air. But clearly, that's too much to ask from someone who's spent decades playing heroes on screen while acting like being a decent person in real life is beneath him. You want everyone to worship you, to treat you like you're special, but you don't want to be held to the same standards as everyone else. That was it. That was the final straw. Ford's face went from red to almost purple with rage. His whole body was trembling now, every muscle tensed. You don't know anything about me. You don't know what I've done behind the scenes. You don't know what I've sacrificed, what I've fought for, what I've given up to try to make a difference in this world. You sit here in your comfortable chair with your opinions and your judgments, surrounded by your yes men and your fans. But you've never stayed yourself on the line the way I have. You've never risked everything for something you believe in. Oh, please, Whoopi scoffed, waving her hand dismissively like she was swatting away a fly. Spare me the righteous indignation. Spare me the victim act. You're an actor who got rich playing pretend. You fly around in private jets and own multiple mansions, and then lecture regular people about their carbon footprint. Don't act like you're some kind of saint who's sacrificed everything. You've sacrificed nothing. I never said I was a saint, Ford shot back, grabbing his jacket from the back of his chair with shaking hands. But I'm also not going to sit here and let you tear me down for cheap applause from your audience. I'm not going to let you paint me as some villain when you don't know the first thing about my life or my work. You want to know what the real problem is? It's people like you who think they have the moral authority to lecture everyone else while doing nothing themselves. You want to talk about sacrifice? What have you sacrificed? What have you given up? I don't have to justify myself to you, Whoopi shot back, her voice rising even higher. This is my show. You're the guest. You're the one who came here. You're the one who needs to answer questions, not me. And I tried to answer them, Ford said, his voice cracking slightly with emotion. But you wouldn't listen. You didn't want answers. You wanted sound bites. You wanted me to say something you could twist and use against me. That's not an interview, Whoopi. That's an interrogation. The audience was completely silent now, watching in stunned disbelief as two legends went to war with each other. Some people were recording on their phones, even though that wasn't allowed. Others just sat there with their jaws hanging open. This wasn't playful banter. This wasn't a misunderstanding that would be cleared up with a laugh and a commercial break. This was real animosity, real anger, real hatred even, and it was all happening live on national television. Whoopi's co-hosts finally tried to step in again, their voices overlapping as they desperately tried to salvage the situation. Maybe we should all just take a breath and calm down for a second. Let's remember, we're all professionals here. No, both Whoopi and Ford said at the exact same time, neither taking their eyes off each other. It would have been funny if it wasn't so intense, so charged with genuine hostility. You know what your problem is, Harrison, Whoopi continued, her voice dripping with disdain, every word laced with contempt. You can't handle being challenged. You've spent so long being Hollywood royalty, being the big star, being Harrison Ford, that you forgot what it's like to be questioned by someone who doesn't worship the ground you walk on. You forgot what it's like to have someone treat you like a regular person instead of some untouchable legend. Well, this is my house, and in my house, nobody is above being held accountable. Not you, not anyone. Accountable for what exactly? Ford demanded, his voice rising again to match hers. His face was still that deep shade of red, a vein visibly throbbing in his temple. For caring about the environment? For dedicating my life and my money to a cause I believe in? For trying to make a difference in this screwed-up world? For living my life the best way I know how? What exactly am I guilty of, Whoopi? Being successful? Being passionate about something that matters? Having the audacity to not kiss your ass on your show? Tell me, what's my crime here? Your crime is being a hypocrite, Whoopi said flatly, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. Your crime is saying one thing and doing another. Your crime is telling people how to live while you do whatever you want. That's what you're guilty of. Watch your mouth, Whoopi warned again. But Ford was past caring. He was past the point of no return. No, I don't think I will, he said, his words coming out fast and heated now. I'm done playing nice. I'm done pretending like this is okay. You ambushed me. You insulted me. And now you're acting like I'm the problem because I won't just sit here and take it. That's not how this works. Then leave, Whoopi said coldly, gesturing toward the exit. If you can't handle a real conversation, if you can't handle being asked tough questions without falling apart, then walk out that door. Nobody's stopping you. Oh, I'm leaving, Ford assured her, already moving away from his seat. But not because you told me to. I'm leaving because I have better things to do than waste my time with someone who's more interested in grandstanding than actually listening. This whole thing was a setup from the start, and you know it. The only thing I know, Whoopi called after him as he started walking toward the edge of the stage, is that you couldn't handle the heat. Big tough Harrison Ford, running away the second someone asks him a hard question. Ford stopped dead in his tracks. He turned back around, his eyes blazing. I'm not running from anything. I'm walking away from a toxic situation that never should have happened in the first place. There's a difference. But you wouldn't know anything about that, would you? You're too busy being right to actually consider that maybe, just maybe, you were wrong. I'm never wrong on my own show. Whoopi fired back, her voice filled with absolute certainty. Then I feel sorry for you, Ford said. And there was something almost sad in his voice now, beneath all the anger. Because being unable to admit when you're wrong, being unable to see past your own ego, that's a lonely way to live. I should know. I've been there. But at least I learned from it. Don't you dare psychoanalyze me, Whoopi snapped, her composure finally cracking completely. You don't get to come on my show, insult me, refuse to answer my questions, and then act like you're taking some kind of moral high ground. That's not how this works. Actually, that's exactly how this works, Ford countered, his voice getting quieter, but somehow more intense. Because I have self-respect. I'm not going to sit there and be your punching bag just because you want to score points with your audience. I don't need this. I don't need you. And I sure as hell don't need this show. The words hung in the air like a bomb that had just detonated. Everyone in the studio knew they had just witnessed something career-defining, something that would be talked about for years. This wasn't just drama. This was a complete breakdown of professional courtesy, and it was all happening in real time. Whoopi stood there, her chest rising and falling with angry breaths. Fine. Walk away. Add it to your list of accomplishments. Harrison Ford, the man who storms off sets and can't handle criticism. You can spin this however you want, Ford said, his hand on his microphone pack, completely removing it now. But everyone watching knows what really happened here. You tried to bait me into a fight, and when I didn't play along the way you wanted, you kept pushing and pushing until something broke. Congratulations, Whoopi. You got your viral moment. I hope it was worth it. With that, Ford turned his back on the whole panel. The cameras followed him as he walked across the stage, his posture straight despite the anger radiating off him. You could see it in every step he took. This wasn't a man backing down. This was a man choosing to remove himself from a situation that had become unbearable. Whoopi called after him one last time, her voice echoing through the studio. That's right, walk away. That's what you're good at, isn't it? Walking away when things get real. Ford didn't respond. He didn't turn around. He didn't acknowledge her words at all. He just kept walking. Past the cameras, past the shocked crew members, past the producers who were probably having heart attacks at what had just unfolded on live television. The other hosts sat in stunned silence. The audience didn't know whether to applaud, gasp, or just sit there in shock. The whole thing had gone from zero to nuclear in a matter of minutes, and now they were all left to pick up the pieces of what had just happened. As Ford reached the edge of the stage, he paused for just a second. For a brief moment, it looked like he might turn around and say something else. But he didn't. He took one more step and disappeared behind the curtain, leaving behind a studio full of shocked people and a confrontation that would be replayed and analyzed for days to come. Whoopi stood there in the middle of the stage, her co-hosts still frozen in their seats, the audience still completely silent. She opened her mouth like she was going to say something, maybe try to salvage the situation or explain what had just happened, but the words didn't come. The damage was done. Harrison Ford had walked off the view in the most dramatic fashion possible, and there was no taking it back. The confrontation had escalated from a simple disagreement to a full-blown war of words, with both parties throwing verbal punches that landed hard and left marks. In the end, Ford made his choice. He chose his dignity over staying for a fight that was never going to end well. He chose to remove himself from a situation where he felt attacked and ambushed, where the conversation had stopped being about his work and had become something much more personal and ugly. As the stage door closed behind him with a heavy thud that echoed through the silent studio, everyone knew they had just witnessed television history. This was the moment that would define both of their legacies in a new way. A moment where two powerful personalities collided and neither one was willing to back down. Harrison Ford was gone, and the view was left to deal with the aftermath of what had just exploded on their stage.